country St. Martin is at a critical turning point in its development. From the devastating hurricanes of 2017 to the COVID-19 pandemic and the current utility crisis, St. Martin continues to contend with recovery efforts and sustainable development. Sustainable development requires an environment that is enabling, an environment that is conducive with equity and equality for the greater good. However, achieving such requires a foundation built on good governance. Good governance embodies an effective and efficient government. This embodiment is dependent on adequate coordination, collaboration, and cooperation between ministries and between ministries and the Council of Ministers. Considering that this is a complex relationship governed by procedures for collaboration to facilitate the management and communication of the entire public administration, as such, effective interministerial coordination and cooperation is seen as key in governing, as a collapse of internal governance structures results in maladministration. Currently, government's administration, whether in policy formation or operations, is compartmentalized or siloed, which limits the level of coordination and cooperation needed for strategic planning and decision-making. This should not be the case, especially as government struggles with the lack of capacity and resources, as well as the ongoing developmental challenges. The baseline study of the public administration identifies conformity as the main issue. As the procedures, rules, and regulations are in place, conformity issues are related to the fact that an integrated public administration working to implement unity of government policy is largely absent. Roles, responsibilities, and moreover, accountability needs to be in balance in order for any organization to achieve its objectives and purpose. Currently, the work focus and use of resources is to maintain recurrent operational tasks. There is an inability to manage programmatically, thereby leading to inefficiencies and ineffectiveness, distorted decision-making, and strategic management. The current case of public governance needs to realign with its original institutional design and procedures of country St. Martin. Moreover, there's a need to finalize the institutional design of country St. Martin. Off the heels of the effects of Hurricanes Irma and Maria and the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of St. Martin has deployed the National Development Vision of St. Martin, NDV. The NDV is a first step in the direction of strategic planning and long-term sustainable development. The baseline study of St. Martin's development from a government perspective has revealed that St. Martin is still transitioning in building government infrastructure and an enabling environment to operate autonomously as a country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The transition process essentially requires St. Martin to build a whole government infrastructure, including the effective exercise of a new government system from scratch, whilst at the same time maintaining public services. Despite a great deal of local planning undertaken to effect the transition by 2012, momentum and efforts have faltered. From 2010 to date, St. Martin has had several changes in government. Changes in the executive branch brings along a varying manner in the handling of the public administration. This in particular as it pertains to top-down management of the ministries. As such, operational and strategic governance is in particular impacted as every government tends to govern in a different manner. Albeit the case, this should not continue to negatively affect the functioning of government, as the framework of the public administration serves as the operational anchor for the public administration and good governance. Taking the aforementioned into consideration, it is imperative that the institutional design of country St. Martin is completed and fully enacted, anchored adequately to ensure not only continuity, but moreover, ensure strategic and operational governance. Change in the executive branch should not equate to the complete and continuous disruption of the public administration, as processes, rules, and regulations remain in place. To effectuate such, currently under development are a series of instruments and initiatives that will support a whole government approach to high-level management. The objective of this approach is to streamline efforts and resources, anchor high-level management, enhance integration of efforts, and establish a knowledge-based public service. These 4 instruments and initiatives are: 1. Strengthening strategic and operational performance through management platforms, the SG and policy platform. These 2 platforms form an integral part of coordination and collaboration within the public administration, with as objective safeguarding the uniformity, interministerial coordination, and cooperation to ensure integration and unity. This requires political maturity. Political maturity to complete the institutional design of Country St. Martin and implement accountability and transparency. But moreover, political maturity to understand the role of government in governing for the future, the long-term future. 2, enhancing donor relations through a funding desk, the special envoy, and the hub. St. Martin is eligible for a range of funding. However, accessibility to funding is not the challenge. The challenge lies more in the areas of governance, project development writing and management, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Exacerbating the aforementioned is the lack of adequate financial management and having annual audited accounts to secure donor funding. Therefore, to support the communities of St. Martin in the area of donor relations, a funding desk is being developed that will provide not only insight into funding streams and requirements, but also support varying aspects surrounding requests for funding, such as providing trainings and review of aspects related to governance. Government has also decided to make use of the Special Envoy. The Special Envoy will serve as a direct partner in the identifying, lobbying, and securing donor funding for St. Martin. In addition to the aforementioned, is the pilot project funded through the Resembid program and implemented by Expertise France, better known as the Hub. The Hub is a facility that will support the overseas countries and territories, OCTs, in pursuing development financing. This is a shared space where the OCTs can connect, strategize, share, and collaborate on development issues, strategies, and activities in priority areas. The Hub will also support the OCTs on the technical level with donor envelopes, not only by identifying relevant envelopes, but also in supporting the application process, program, and project management of projects under the guidance of the respective OCT. Furthermore, the Hub will act as an information and knowledge-based facility for OCTs. 3, mainstreaming national development. In 2022, the government of St. Martin concluded and launched the National Development Vision. The National Development Vision is a high-level shared vision that highlights the vision statement of St. Martin along with the respective development themes and goals to 2030 and beyond. Government continues to ensure alignment with the visionary goals, alignment of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Small Island Developing State Programs, ministry plans, governing programs, and the Country Reform Package. And 4, underpinning disaster risk management. A critical characteristic of St. Martin is the geographical position on the hurricane belt, compounded by the effects of climate change. Government continues to deploy measures to support these challenges. This is done by reinforcing disaster risk management through the development of an Office of Disaster Management, funded through the EU Resembid program. Implemented by Expertise France, the Project Office of Disaster Management is well underway. With the inception phase finalized, the next steps are workshops to determine tasks, roles, and responsibilities along with lines of communication. A critical aspect of the Project Office of Disaster Management includes the linking of climate change to disaster risk management. This is a critical component of the project, as having mitigation and prevention efforts in place will limit the effects of disasters and moreover incorporate climate change in decision-making processes, resulting in minimized impacts.
SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah. Your social health insurances.
But it's also the day that I turned in the signed coalition agreement. And there's been some lessons learned. I hope I'm not the only one that learned those lessons. I hope that the MPs that are going out and those that are coming in also learned some lessons. We had the unfortunate scenario of having to go back to the polls 8 months later. And quite frankly, the only thing that we do when we call snap elections or early elections is upset the electorate. And this is one of the reasons that they lose trust in the system. And it is our responsibility as leaders, whether we are executive or legislative, to rebuild that trust with the electorate, to bring back hope, to let them know that we're going to do everything in our power to improve their lives. And to be honest, bring some dignity back to being a public servant. I am certain that the results of the election of August 2024 will forever remind the leaders of this country, outgoing and incoming, that the whole purpose of this job is to serve the people. If we continue to ignore that purpose, that objective, then we will have a worsening state of our island. And when you don't serve the masses, they will remind us that the power lies in the hands of the voters. Because what has happened for a long time is that leaders get caught up in power struggles instead of actually getting caught up in the people's struggles. I want to explain what the last 3 weeks have been like, or almost 3 weeks have been like for me since Election Day. After coalition talks began, I was asked if I would enter into executive, given the two options that was negotiated by the Party for Progress. And I clearly stated where my strengths could be better applied. That was a discussion that I had with the leader, and that request was taken back to the team and the big donors and supporters. And the response received was that continuity was preferred. Now, was I disappointed in that? Absolutely, I'm human. I was disappointed in that. And at a certain point, I even said that I felt like the party was holding me back. And, you're probably wondering, why am I telling you this? But what I'm saying here right now is also what I said to the party leader, to her face, and in writing. And that's the political maturity that we're always talking about. And, I said to you, that yes, I was indeed disappointed. And one of the reasons that I felt that is because there also was a candidate meeting that I wasn't invited to. And when I asked the leader about it, it was initially denied. And then when I was very specific in my persistence, and I said, well, wasn't there a meeting in a specific place on a specific day? And then I was told that, oh, well, I left the candidate group chat, so basically I wasn't invited. But we're the IT, the tech savvy party, so normally our requests come via email, and I didn't receive an email after verifying that. That's pretty much, what I wanted to get out to the public. And again, you're probably wondering, why am I telling you this? But I've read that the hardest thing in leadership is compromise. And political compromise is deferring one's ideas for the majority. And that's where I find myself. 689 of you voted for me. Some of you are upset that I'm not an executive. Some of you are supporting me regardless of what my decision would be. And some of you are telling me to stay in Parliament. But I've had so many calls of people in those three categories that I felt the need to control the narrative, which I very, very rarely do in ever since being in office. But this is one of those opportunities to control the narrative. What I want to say to the 689 voters, because it's 690, but I voted for myself. And what I want to say to you is this is an election for Parliament. And while some of you may be disappointed that I'm not in executive, 689 of you voted for me and gave me a seat at the table. And you should be proud of that, because I definitely am proud of that. And having a seat at that table, which is in the House of Parliament, not only gives me the opportunity to look over one ministry, it gives me the opportunity to look over all of the ministries. And sometimes we tend to forget what comes with the job, the task of being a member of Parliament. And don't for 1 minute think that I'm going to take anything lightly, or that everything that has happened in these 3 weeks has been easy, because it has not been easy. What our country deserves right now is maturity, and the hardest thing of leadership, which is compromise. So my message to you today is to encourage that from all your members of Parliament, because it's not just me that has been given that task. There's 14 other MPs that have been given that task of actually having responsibility of 7 different ministries. And I want to leave a message here as a preview for what is to come. To the Prime Minister, the VKIS officers have been waiting for a while to get the same benefits as a full-time worker within the justice system. And when we hear the word vrijwilliger, we think that it's voluntary. But those people are working full-time all the time, and I know you'll do everything in your power to actually make that a reality. To the Minister of VSA, we have a struggle in SZV, and one of those reasons for that struggle is the fact that our policyholders, the base of that, is very limited. Perhaps you should consider expanding the policyholders to sole proprietorship, like taxi drivers, bus drivers, so that they don't have to pay private insurance all the time. And to the Minister of Finance, our tax environment is absurd. And we rely so much on private sector to fix a lot of the things that technically government should be doing. And I think it'll go a long way that tax reform is actually done. Start by decreasing profit tax to 15% and see whether or not it's actually possible for sole proprietorships to be held by persons born outside of the Netherlands Antilles who are permanent residents and actually naturalized citizens. That'll go a long way in expanding the revenue that comes into the Ministry of Finance. To the Minister of Romy, don't forget that there's a big responsibility that comes on your plate as well, because we are a tourist destination. And sometimes that gets a little bit confused with the Ministry of Tayat. So these are all things that we can do across ministries. You have a big responsibility of ensuring that we don't really have sewage running in our roads anymore, that we have proper road markings, that with the help of the Minister of Tayat, we can actually get those proper road markings to the people that need it, because they're always pooling their money together, which is the taxi drivers. And a perfect example is what they do every couple of years at the head of town, because the lines aren't drawn and they pool money together and do it themselves. To the Minister of Education, we have a big problem here where students are left behind or left in a corner when they're not keeping up to speed like the rest of the students. Now, that may not be the fault of a teacher, but what it means is that we lack the extra assistance we need to make sure that kids get the best education ever. And one of those things that will go a long way is for parents and families that have kids that are on the spectrum, that kids that are autistic, that we actually have services and teachers that know how to deal with those special needs. to the Minister of Justice. Continue doing the work started by previous ministers, and I say previous ministers plural, to bring the LBAs up to date. But what I will ask you, Minister of Justice, is also to consider something I said publicly, where in the absence of having an abundance of cash to increase salaries that are very much needed across the board of essential workers, work closely with the Minister of Finance to give incentives to property owners to actually provide lower priced housing or rent in the absence of us being able, or the Ministry of Rami being able to give affordable housing right now. Work closely, because essential workers that actually need a chance to thrive would include nurses, firemen, police officers, school teachers, and as one NGO worker reminded me, NGO workers. It's not limited, but it gives those essential workers within our community a fighting chance to actually, with the limited sort of salary, or the salary that hasn't been updated in a long time, to afford housing in neighborhoods of their preference, and do that in conjunction, in partnership with private sector. Allow tax relief to come in. And that is pretty much my message for today, and what the public will have to look forward to as for me being their representative, as the second biggest vote getter, as a member of parliament. There is strength in that position, and we all have a duty to support our government, to give St. Martin a chance to actually thrive, to get back on track, and give us the best country that we could possibly provide.
SXM, your social and health insurance. SXM, your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah, your social and health insurances.
We have had two elections, a regular election and then a couple of months later a so-called snap election. If you really look back, it is safe to say that the entire parliamentary year has been dominated by politics, because no sooner did we open the parliamentary year, so last year, September, then the preparations and campaigning for an election started. The election was held on January the 11th. Parliament took office, the new parliament took office in February, and then we were faced with all of the occurrences to which my colleagues referred before snap elections were called. And I think it would behoove all of us, and I've heard this from some of you, to while that is what it is in terms of the year that we're closing off today, have we learned anything? And I think we have. We have learned, for example, that the much talked about electoral reform, we really have to do something about it. And it's not only about changes to national ordinances, new ordinances, even the Constitution, if you wish, but I also believe that there are some matters on the level of the rules of order of Parliament that can be adjusted in order for Parliament to give its own input and impetus into the overall electoral reform that we all talk about. It is no secret that I was not pleased with the fact that so soon after an election and a new government taking office, that snap elections were called. While I understand why it was called, nevertheless, I thought that we were doing the people of St. Martin a disservice. However, given where we stand today, maybe, just maybe, it was for the best, because the election, in my opinion, has clarified several matters that held the attention and the concern of the people of St. Martin. I hear reference, and rightfully so, to the duties of Parliament, but I believe that the overarching element of success in our endeavors will be collaboration with the government of the day. It is clear that individually, as members of Parliament, we have our priorities, we have our visions, we have our intentions of things that we would like to do. However, if we really want to make progress, it will have to be in collaboration with the government, who I hope will be able not only to deliver a governing program, but to have a program with minutes and moments of evaluation, of control by Parliament, specifically for the things that government is telling itself and the people of St. Martin that will be done by the government. If we look at areas such as areas that have a great influence on us and our people, just to mention a few, immigration, and we see the changing views, the changing legal and judicial views on immigration, it requires a different way of thinking about the matter of immigration. If we look at the kind of quagmire that we find ourselves in today with respect to the financial position of the government and thus, by extension, of the country, we need to talk and discuss a new financial model. We cannot continue to pretend that our discussions surrounding the budgets of the country, the annual accounts of the country, and keeping everything or trying everything to keep our country's growth within the parameters of approximately 500 million guilders, give or take a few million here and there every year, we're not going to be able to hack it. If we look at matters such as our debt situation and realize where we are today, it is unfortunate that we are still being, or this matter is still being used every time again as a way for especially the Netherlands to attain and obtain what they on that particular moment will consider important. We need to address the matter of our financial situation, also, of course, with the Netherlands, and we need to do that as soon as possible. The kingdom relations and the ongoing discussions that we have had about a dispute regulation. One of the reasons, in my opinion, that today we cannot convincingly present our case, which I believe we would have a strong case in terms of tying the COVID loans repayment to whatever is at the order of the day, such as, for example, the Inya debacle, if without that dispute regulation where we can take a hard case to be decided upon through so-called arbitration, we will continue to be spinning our tops in the mud, to use an old adage. Being nearly an eternal optimist, I view every opportunity as one to do better, make better, and amplify our resolve as to where we want to take this country. There are many, many challenges before us, and I do believe, as I started out to say, that unless we address the fact that we are operating within a party political system, nevertheless are continuing in the direction of a more personal political system, we're going to have to make the choice what exactly it is and what it will be. Because we can change starting from our rules of order right up to the Constitution, but if we allow the personal political system to continue without it being challenged, then we will constantly be facing issues in this respect that would jeopardize the stability of this country.